Hi, in this video I'm going to show you how to create a fluid grid layout without using the insert panel or using the insert layout objects. Because for some reason certain versions of CS6 that you download no longer have those options. So we're going to pretend like they don't exist. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to File, New Fluid Grid Layout. To make sure my doc type is HTML5. It's going to prompt me to save my CSS file. I'm going to save it in a folder called let's try that again. I'm going to save it in a folder called Styles. Then after it sets it up, I'm going to go down here, make sure I'm on my local view, and I'm going to first save this. Save it for whatever makes sense for your project. And then it asks me, where do I want to save these other files? So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to say just put them in my styles folder. And then once they're in my styles folder, I'm going to move my JavaScript one in my scripts folder. I'm going to hit update. And once that happens, I'm going to close that and no longer need it. So a lot of this is going to be hand coded, but don't worry. This is really meant for people who just know the basics so far. So you'll notice that right now it's set up as I got this sample div layout 1, right? And it's within a div called grid container. So basically what's happened, if I look at master, I can see the same thing. So my CSS, the way these fluid grid layouts work, I'm going to get rid of a lot of this just so you can start to see everything that's going on. So I'm going to get rid of some of these comments, because I want you to understand the way this works. And so the way it works is, let's undo that. I want to make sure I have the mobile layout. Is it has certain CSS up top that is relevant for anyone or any page, regardless of the device. Then it has the mobile layout. Then it's got the tablet, and then it's got the desktop. Now to make this clear, I'm going to actually try to collapse a little of this. So I'm going to do this real quick. I'm going to hit pause. Okay, so basically what I've tried to do is collapse this so you can clearly see what this looks like. So you have your general CSS for the page, then your CSS for the mobile, your CSS for the tablet, your CSS for the desktop. Always pay attention to this red curly brace and this red text and red curly brace, because everything for the desktop has to be within this. If you delete this curly brace or things get pushed outside, that's a problem. Same thing here. Move that up. Everything here down to here is for the tablet. So you'll notice that it already set up this basic sample div, what I called it, for me. So what we're going to do is we're going to change this from layout div 1 to header, and then we're going to go to master CSS, and everywhere you see layout div 1, just going to change that to header. So then the next thing we're going to do is we're basically going to copy this, and we're going to create a new div for each one that we want. So we have our header. I'm going to say header here. Then I'm going to do one called section. There's lots of ways you can name this. This one's going to be call out. This one's going to be footer. Okay, so now I'm going to go back to my master, and essentially what I have to do is I have to create one for each. So I'm going to call section, and I'm going to have this float left, and I'm going to have the width of it and my mobile be 100%. And right now I'm going to add a display block. And I'm going to close that. I'm going to do the same thing for my callout. But my callout I want to, in this case, float left for my mobile. I'll have it float left for the others. And I'll change my width for those as well. And my last one is my footer. So once I set these up, I can then copy and paste them for each of the following below, because basically whatever you do for the mobile layout, you want to do for the desktop and the tablet, though often you will make some changes to each of those. Okay, so before I go, I'm going to do a few other things here. I'm going to add a background header, or a background color that is, to my header. Let's change that to a blue one. So then we're going to add a background color as well to the grid. And then we're going to add a background header as well to the body. So we're basically going to add a body tag up here. So this is going to add it to the whole page, regardless. So now that I have a few of these things set, I'm going to copy these three, making sure that I have the background color for my header. So down here, I'm just going to have still have it float left, but I'm going to save this to 70%. This I'm going to have float right, my call out. I'm going to change that to, we'll say 25%. Okay, then we're going to copy this all the way down. Now, I'm going to make sure I got my background color from my grid. Make sure I don't mess up that curly brace there. Okay. Do that once more. I'm going to come down here. I'm going to try that once more. Okay, so I'm going to double check some things here. Okay, I think everything looks good. So I'm going to save all and I'm going to preview. You can always check things out down here, which is always helpful, but often I like to preview this in my browser. So basically you can see my header, might see my section, you can see my footer, my callout, and then as I make the page smaller, you can see that the callout no longer is floated to the right, it actually just drops down below. So that looks good. So just to help us see a few things more here, what I'm going to do, and I don't normally add a height to certain things because I just want actually the content within it to adjust it. But in this case I want to show something. So the height for the header, we'll do 150. And we're going to put that in each of these. Sorry about that. I'm putting it near the width because that's where I'm used to seeing it. And then I'm going to do the same thing down here for my section. I'm going to add a height of 550. And I'm actually not going to add a height for my mobile because I want it to adjust as is. So let's actually do a couple more things before we try to wrap this up, because the idea here is not to show you how to do a complete website, but rather show you how to do the basics. So what I'm basically doing here is adding some headers. H1 in my header, H2 in my section. My callout I'm going to add in H3. Then I'm going to go back to my master CSS because this is something that's on all of my pages, I'm just going to go ahead and do some basics here. And I'm going to do it up top rather than. So I do that as Arial from my font family, and I'm going to do the color. I want it to be consistent throughout. So the H2, I'm going to actually copy this up here, and all I'm going to change is I'm going to change my color, because in this case I'm going to use a blue. And then I'm going to do the same thing again. This is going to be my H3. I'm going to change it to a gray. Okay. So I could also up here, if I wanted to, set my body font to Arial. Let's pretend we do something like that. Let's try that again. Okay, so then I'm going to close that. I'm going to save all, and I'm going to preview. Okay, so this is what it looks like. So far it's looking good. My callout's over there. Then it pops down.